non-obsession. Thereupon, the Lord, the Tathagata, demonstrated the consummation of the perfection of wisdom called the assembling of the conquest achieved through the sameness of all dharmas. From non-obsession with greed should non-obsession with hate be known. From non-obsession with hate, non-obsession with delusions. From non-obsession with delusions, non-obsession with all dharmas. And from non-obsession with all dharmas, non-obsession with the perfection of wisdom. If someone, Vajrapani, will listen to this method of the perfection of wisdom, bear it in mind, recite and develop it, then, even though he may kill all the beings born in the triple world, he will not fall into the place of woe. Though his sins be vast, he will soon awake to the supreme enlightenment. Thereupon, the Lord Vajrapani demonstrated in further detail the meaning of this dharmahood. He made the gesture called the thunderbolt, which conquers the triple world. He frowned and raised his eyebrows. His eyes flamed, and he showed his eye teeth, stretched out his left foot, and taught the quintessence of the doctrine called Vajra Hum. Hum. The state of purity. Thereupon, the Lord, the Tathagata, demonstrated the method of the perfection of wisdom called the seal of the sovereign cognition, which surveys the sameness of all dharmas. The state of purity from all greed leads in the world to the state of purity from hate. The state of purity from all taints leads in the world to the state of purity from all evil. The state of purity from all dharmas leads in the world to the state of purity of all beings. The state of purity of all cognition leads in the world to the state of purity of the perfection of wisdom. If, Vajrapani, someone will listen to this method of the perfection of wisdom, bear it in mind, recite and develop it, then, although he may find himself in the midst of all kinds of stains and passions, like a lotus he will not be stained by the adventitious defilements, the stains and faults of the passions. Although his sins be vast, he will soon awake to the supreme enlightenment. Thereupon, the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara, the great being, with a smiling face, explained the meaning of this method in greater detail. He saw that, like a lotus with wide open petals, a bodhisattva is not stained by the stains of passion, etc. And, for the sake of the whole world, he taught this quintessence of the doctrine called the variegated lotus. The gift. Thereupon, the Lord, the Tathagata, demonstrated the method of the perfection of wisdom called the womb of the cognition, which has as its source the consecration of all the Tathagatas. The gift of consecration leads to the acquisition of kingship over everything in the triple world. The gift of meaning leads to the fulfillment of all hopes. The gift of Dharma leads to the attainment of the sameness of all Dharmas. And the fleshly gift leads to the acquisition of all happiness in body, speech, and thought. Thereupon, the Bodhisattva Akasagarbha, the great being, gave a smile. He tied onto his head the rosary of the adamantine and precious consecration, explaining the meaning of this method in greater detail, and taught the quintessence of the doctrine. Traum. The seal. Thereupon, the Lord, the Tathagata, demonstrated the method of the perfection of wisdom called the thunderbolt of the sustaining power of the seal of the cognition of all the Tathagatas. The assumption of the seal of the body of all the Tathagatas leads to all Tathagatahood. The assumption of the seal of the speech of all the Tathagatas leads to the acquisition of all dharmas. The assumption of the seal of the thought of all the Tathagatas leads to the acquisition of all concentrations. and the assumption of the adamantine seal of all the Tathagatas leads to the highest success of all, the accomplishment of the adamantine essence of all acts of body, speech, and thought. If someone hears this method of the perfection of wisdom, bears it in mind, and recites it, gives advice on it, and develops it, he will, after he has attained all possible spiritual successes, accomplishments, cognitions, and activities, including the highest spiritual success, that is, the accomplishment of the adamantine essence in all acts of body, speech, and mind, soon awaken to the supreme enlightenment, even though his sins be vast. Thereupon the great Bodhisattva Vajramusti took hold of the seal of the great adamantine sacrament and explained the meaning of this method in greater detail. With a smiling face, he taught the quintessence of the doctrine called the sacrament of the adamantine and compact seal of all kinds of spiritual success. Ah!